past years, we've done a lot of these discussion bits on the show. And we usually be talking pop culture related. Like, what's your favorite scary films, Tim? Or favorite shows or stories? This year, our producer came up with an ingenious idea. Let's kind of do something a little bit different. Let's talk about some weird stuff. Some stuff that some people may or may not have encountered. We're talking extraterrestrials. We're talking aliens. And then we're also going to talk about ghosts. Our own personal, maybe experiences. Plus, just our general thoughts. Do these things exist? If so, what does that mean? If they don't, what does that mean? I mean, this is unrehearsed, unscripted. We didn't even correspond via email. We literally don't know what each other's going to bring to the table here. Mm-hmm. This is a first shot, one-y-done-y. So, Tim, aliens, extraterrestrials, extra testicles. What's your take, man? I'm going to let you go first on the ETs.
Well...
I'll be right here. I'll be sitting right here.
Okay.
And I'm going to be eating, you know, I mean, actually, this, you think it's a cool visual prop? Well, sure, it is, but it's also an excuse for me to stuff my face. I don't have any Halloween candy at my house yet, and so I'm going to be eating on this. Well, we're out to shoot. I just actually had a little mini review, Russell Stover's raspberry cream dark chocolate. It was succulent.
Okay. Before I begin, I'm going to do a plug for another show, Extra Credits. If you aren't watching them, I highly recommend you start watching them. Mostly they're game designers that talk about aspiring gamers, but they did a 2-part episode called Funding XCOM. And in it, they dealt with something called the Drake equation and the Fermi paradox. Now, here's a quick look at the Drake equation. I don't know if you can actually see that, camera dude, or not, but this is supposed to be a rough approximation of about how much intelligent life there might be in a solar system. I don't remember what all the variables stand for. Math was my dad's thing, not mine. Anyhow, their conclusion with the data that they plugged in, which I highly recommend you go out and research the Drake equation, is that within the galaxy there should be, well, shoot, I can't remember if it was solar system or galaxy. I'm going to say probably galaxy. There should be like 7.5 intelligent species per galaxy. Now, the Fermi paradox is kind of looking at, assuming that number is accurate, and even under slow progression, the galaxy being, what, 16 billion years old, that we should be...
Give or take a couple weeks.
Yeah. That should have been enough time that even under slow development, intelligent life should have sprouted in various places. They should have populated their parts of the galaxy, and even if they didn't travel to visit us, we should see something like, you know, when we spit out radio waves, if there's other intelligent life out there, they should be able to detect us, and we should, in turn, be able to detect them. And thus far, it doesn't really appear that we've not really been able to pick up anything.
That we know, unless it's being
so
right up the road. Right, Pat? You know, Area 51, Tim, everybody knows it.
Yeah.
Up by you, there's another hotbed, allegedly, for alien activity.
Mm-hmm. So, but
right,
in terms of, do I believe that aliens exist? Almost certainly. Will we ever have any meaningful contact with them? I doubt it. Because in order for them to cross the expanse to actually get to us without doing like an arc situation where they like freeze themselves or something like that and unfreeze themselves years later, or it just, so much energy is involved that if a civilization would be that advanced that they could actually cross the galaxy, and they wouldn't actually have any real interest in doing so. We'd be about as interesting as ants are. I mean, I suppose you might, maybe that is why. Maybe we're just grabbing, let's see what this species of ant looks like. Throw it in the ass,
Yeah.
So
that's always the funnest part.
I will say that at a very young age, the movie Fire in the Sky made me terrified of aliens. I don't know why. Even to this day, that's one of those things that if I approach a dark window, like out in the country, like at my folks' house or whatever, my fear is always that there's the gray alien standing there looking at me, watching me with those big black eyes, like we're gonna fuck him next in the ass. I think we crossed the PG mark. Sorry, kids. Brian?
I'll give my 2 cents, but before I do, Tim, you lived on farmland growing up, literally in the middle of nowhere, dead silent at night. Surely you saw shooting stars and things. Did you ever, as a kid, I don't know how our imaginations as childs run away with us. I'll get to that momentarily, but did you ever feel that way? Did you ever see anything you couldn't, classify?
No, not really.
Okay.
I've been a fraidy cat most of my life, so I pretty much, always went in when it was dark or whatever. Didn't do a lot of stargazing and stuff like that. Again, that was more my dad's field. He actually had a telescope and everything that, a fairly expensive one too. It was like a $300 telescope where you could, actually program in the different constellations it would find it itself. It just wasn't really my thing. I mean, not that I was opposed to it, but, I can't say that I ever had a paranormal experience of any kind, honestly.
Okay. For me, growing up as kids, I do remember times, usually they were summer, when we were allowed to be out a little bit later than the rest of the year. Boys will be boys in our neighborhood, hanging out. Excuse me. Occasionally we would even do kind of like mock campouts where we would, build, we'd have our tents out back and a bunch of us would stay out there eating junk food and passing out. But there was more than one occasion where from my front porch or in the backyard I saw something that really caught my eye. Me and a couple of neighborhood kids even at one point almost started like our own paranormal society where we were going to have like different bureaus where one guy's specialty was going to be like aliens, somebody else's were going to be Bigfoot, whatever. Local legends, urban legends, but no. So like there's but like I mentioned earlier, as kids, our minds run away with us. Mm-hmm. Maybe I did see something interesting in the sky, likely not a UFO, but as a kid, you're just locked in, and once your kind of momentum starts building up, and you get carried away. So yeah, I mean, as a kid, I thought I had saw some things, but that was back then. Could it happen? Like you said, you most certainly believe that it's a distinct possibility, and I mean, I have to concur. I haven't done all the data, I haven't even scratched the surface, but let's throw this into the discussion before we move on. The pyramids. The ancient Egyptians, they didn't have any tools to cut granite in those shapes. There was no tool designed to cut stone like that. How did they, get those precise stones? How did they, I guess they moved them on the backs of slave labor, but
actually, recent data says that it wasn't. They weren't actually like dragged up the stones with Hebrew slaves, like
depicted.
But actually, they were using water to actually ford it up there. That's how they were actually able to move it up there. And I don't know. I'm not of the opinion that the pyramids are something. Extraterrestrial in nature. I mean, it was quite simply. Don't get me wrong; they are a marvel. But they built up in the most basic geometric shape that they could possibly come up with. So they're impressive for the sheer size of them and the ingenuity of using water to actually ford and get it up there. But no, I don't think there's anything extraterrestrial. I mean, I love the movie Stargate, but
okay. I guess, looking at the science of everything, the cosmos, the world, how big it truly is, not just our planet, I mean, it really gets the mind to spinning. And if you ever find yourself in a quiet moment and you start thinking about that sort of stuff, I mean, yeah, it's definitely fascinating. It's food for thought. Mm-hmm. And like we were talking about off camera before we started this, people that are watching this, if you've had any paranormal experiences, ghost encounters, you need to let us know in the comments. Throw it down there. We really appreciate it. We'd love to get some discussion coming out of this.
And feel free to point out all the ways that I am wrong. Because I watch a little bit of History Channel, a little bit of Discovery Channel, and a little bit of Extra Credits, and I'm sure that my data and conclusions are completely wrong because I'm reading the Cliff Notes of the Cliff Notes of the Cliff Notes.
Hey, I mean, it's cool. You throw something into that melting pot. Mm-hmm. And now, ghost. This is another hot topic. It's a spooky topic, so it certainly fits into the wheelhouse of RTW Halloween. Mm-hmm. Ghost is another interesting one, man. I didn't really think about ghosts until fairly, the last few years. Mm-hmm. My ghost reality show of choice, I know there's 4 or 5 predominant ones on the airwaves in America, but it's Ghost Adventures on Travel Channel. The 3 guys that do that show, I find that they not only get the most compelling stuff, but I like that they don't go in there with a large film crew. Mm-hmm. It's very intimate, and that's a whole other debate, a whole other can of worms that I'm not sure we need to get into. Are they faked? Are they hoax? Are they real? Just like when I watch my professional wrestling, I kind of like to, take my belief and kind of, put it to the side. I don't know. I'm not going to argue for either side passionately at the moment. Mm-hmm. When I watch the shows, I don't think, is this rigged? Because my mind, starts to think, well, if it is rigged, why did they only get one EVP on this episode? Why not make it 5? Why not make them even crazier? Like, you've been doing this show for how many years? The 100th episode actually airs a day or two after we shoot this. But there are some of those episodes sometimes that kind of give me the chills. It makes me think if, taking this at face value, if this is real, if this person's been stuck in this prison or hospital or house for this long, their soul or some remnant of them, like, isn't that amazing? Isn't that frightening? Isn't that terribly sad? And so yeah, there's been a couple episodes that have not maybe emotional, but certainly kind of put me on edge and made me think about things. Again, I've never had a true ghost encounter. As a child, I often spooked myself. Like most kids, didn't want to go down to the basement a lot, dark spots. About a year ago, there's a pioneer cemetery close to where I live in Fairfield, Ohio. And I went there by myself once, and it's kind of a creepy little, it's on top of a hill, very secluded. And I heard an old man's voice. And at first I immediately thought, because within earshot there are some really nice homes that kind of border part of the cemetery, I thought, well, maybe didn't see anybody. And that was kind of weird, So was it something, I don't know, I can't say with any certainty, but it definitely gave me alarm. If ghosts exist, what does that mean? I don't know, man. At least I guess I'm thankful that I don't have any demonic or any of those crazy spirits where I'm at.
Well, I can say I was definitely a lot more open to the possibility of ghosts back in my more religious days. Yeah, I remember actually there was one time I was with my girlfriend at the time, and we were driving along, and the electrical system in our car started going crazy, and the doors started locking themselves and unlocking themselves, which probably was just an electrical glitch. But at the time, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is spiritual warfare. It's Satan trying to get at us and stuff like that.
Oh my God.
Hey, that was my mindset. Ask your wife. She knew me back then. Yeah, I was the Jesus freak in high school. But nowadays, again, just based on what little I've seen, History Channel, a little bit of Ghost Hunters, I'm not actually convinced that if there are apparitions that people are seeing, I'm not completely convinced that they're actually interactive. I mean, the term that they use a lot of times is residual haunt. I guess the idea is like when you have your TV set on the same thing for too long and an image gets burned into it. Because what I've heard a lot more of is where people will go and they'll see like an image of an old man, like in like the Winchester House or something like that, just kind of sitting in a chair looking sad or whatever, or at like a Civil War memorial or whatever. Areas where there's strong emotion, that sometimes they'll just see that person there, and if they are engaged in some sort of activity, it's like the activity they were in when they were alive. They're not aware of the people around them. It's like the image of them during that time was just burned into history or whatever. So if you go into that area, you see a little bit of it or something like that.
And that is, I mean, obviously when you're watching these shows, all kinds of questions might pop into your head. Like when I'm seeing some of them, I'm thinking, well, if these are interactive, why are they chilling in the basement? Like, in a dark house where it's basically pitch black. Like, that would be awfully boring to do for 40, 50 years. Like, why not explore a bit? Are they confined to that specific house? Can they not leave through the front door? What's the physics of that? I mean, there's all these questions that you might have. But, that residual thing, that's a good point. A lot of times, too, recently on those shows, I've noticed maybe it's not like a full-bodied apparition or a figure, but it's these balls of energy. And sometimes they get some really interesting, I'll even say compelling stuff, where you'll see from one of their cameras, like a ball of light hits somebody in the shoulder, and the next thing they start feeling really nauseous or they start feeling pain. And then sometimes you will even see the ball fly off, and it's like, man, what is that? Like, so I don't know. I like watching Ghost Adventures, at least. I don't particularly care or find time for any of the other programs currently, but
back in the day, our cameraman and I used to watch Ghost Hunters pretty regularly.
That was the first, and it's certainly.
I think it started out more real than it became. Because I noticed in the first couple seasons, they did a lot more times where they didn't find anything, or they even debunked, like, no, this is faulty wiring, and it's messing with your head, and that's why you're hallucinating these things.
A lot of that.
But as the show went on, I felt like maybe the producers were saying, hey, you know what would make better ratings? If you had more ghosts. And I think they started to fake it as they went along.
And for me, it wasn't even an issue so much of the validity of it. It was more so just in terms of production value. The show is incredibly droll. Like, it's It's repetitive.
Oh yeah, every
And
episode
awesome.
they explain what an EVP is. Every episode.
Every single episode, and they've done hundreds. They will at least once an episode break away to a voiceover or no, an actual shot, a one shot. Have Grant, one of the guys. So an EVP is electronic voice phenomenon. It's like, I'm fucking kidding, man. You've been beating that into my head for a decade.
Yeah.
So that show to me, and also like I mentioned earlier, we work in production. We have backgrounds in college and that. It's one thing if it was just you and me, Tim, walking through a scary house tonight with camcorders.
Yeah.
That would be pretty creepy.
Yeah.
We might be a little bit out of our wits. If it's you and me and an entire film production crew, we're talking 3 or 4 guys holding cables, lights, sound, boom, all tromping through a house. I'm not really going to be that on edge.
No.
If something jumps out at me, be it a bum or a specter, I got these guys back here with big poles and shit to hit it. So, that's my take on that show. Obviously, it's got its fans,
Now, one thing that I don't hear get brought up very often, and I read about this in the book The Mothman Prophecy, which ended up getting made into a movie with Richard Gere.
Yeah.
But the guy that wrote about it, supposedly these are pulled from his real-life experiences. He actually was writing, he mentioned how the residents, I can't remember the name of the author, but he wrote about the pulp character, the Shadow, if you are familiar with him at all.
Yeah, I saw his movie at the drive-in as a kid.
Okay, well, after that author died, people would swear that they would see the Shadow, like, in his, like, in the field around his house or whatever. But how could that be? Because the Shadow was not based on anything realistic. He was a fictional character. But, again...
Maybe he was a crazy fan.
Well, the theory thrown out there, and there's a term for this, it's escaping me at the moment, but it's one of those things that if enough people think about a thing, they might actually cause it to manifest. Even the show Supernatural did a thing where this guy was spreading this myth of this allegedly haunted house, and because enough people bought into it, it actually created the haunting that people thought about. So I don't know if that's a legit thing, or if it was just, I mean, I've heard about it at least in 2 different sources here, so I have to think that's... So, I mean, who knows? I mean, people believing that that Mansfield is haunted might make Mansfield haunted. I don't know. I don't know what's beyond. I've been on a couple of ghost hunts. They were completely, I can't say that they were completely fruitless. What I can say is I was too damn lazy to watch the footage and listen to it all. Ghost hunts are awesome when you're doing them.
Right.
But reviewing the footage afterward, I mean, you aim a camera at a wall and you watch nothing. And if you're really into it, you record hours of nothing. And then you're listening to your mic for hours, and it's nothing, and nothing, and nothing. So I've been on 2 or 3 ghost hunts, and I've never actually bothered to really go through the footage.
Yeah, we did some back in the day, but it was more so just for the fun of the moment and documenting that. We'd go through some old cemeteries and different haunted sites, abandoned farmhouses and whatnot. We spooked ourselves a lot, but I think it was more so just the fun in the moment.
Yeah.
I will say, as we're bringing this to a close, you mentioned a film earlier in a moment that stuck with you, and I gotta tip my hat. M. Night Shyamalan, a director who's been under heavy fire for the last half decade or whatever. I mean, he fell from graces. I believe at one point he was considered the next Spielberg.
I remember
that was in print.
Yeah.
And but anyway, this isn't a. But I just want to tip my hat to him, because when I saw Signs in the theater, and this isn't a reflection on the quality of the movie as a whole, etc., but there's a scene in there that at the time, in a packed theater, I found incredibly effective, similar to the one you mentioned. That's when, in the movie, they're watching a newscast, and it cuts away to some footage that a family had sent in from like New Mexico or somewhere. Don't remember where, but and so it's like inside a house, and all of a sudden, at the back screen door, this alien just appears. Mm-hmm. It's a very simple, it's a quick shot. Of course you hear the ping of the music, and the soundtrack beeps it up. But man, that experience in that auditorium, I was sitting next to guys, big guys, linebacker dude. We all popcorn went flying, because, I mean, it's what we wanted, and like, that one moment of that, and the fact that it was surveillance footage, it wasn't shot, it was in a cinematic shot, lended a little bit of credibility or whatever. I mean, I don't know, but that moment, seeing it that first time was incredibly effective, and I loved it. One of my favorite film-going moments in decades was that, so.
Last thing I'm going to say, There was one time, my friends and I were working on a movie that never got released. It was called Nightlight. I think the trailer might still be online somewhere. But anyhow, there's a day where I'm driving up to Dayton. We're going to work on this movie. I'm driving through country cornfields on Route 4. I'm listening to the Stephen King book on tape of Bag of Bones. And in that, the character, I think Pierce Brosnan in the movie played him. His wife is dead and is actually kind of communicating through refrigerator magnets, using him as like a Ouija board. And he comes home every day and finds a new message from his dead wife or whatever.
You fucked up. No.
How did you fuck that whore? Come on, really.
Delete your browser history.
Yeah. So anyhow, it was a little unnerving. And then I get to the place where we're going to be shooting, and the cast has created a makeshift Ouija board in the basement because my friend at the time thought that his basement was haunted. Now, Brandon has some stories about hauntings there. I think it was probably just faulty wiring, although they did have a shared experience there. But anyhow, they have a Ouija board and they think they're talking to this ghost or whatever. And the experience they had was him and my friend Robert. They crashed on the just in the basement. So Robert swears that he woke up at one point and saw like an apparition floating above Brandon this night. Brandon had a dream where there was a girl that he was interested in, was on the couch, like sitting next to him talking, and it started out, she was explaining all the reasons why she wasn't interested in him, and her voice dropped more and more and more until eventually the last thing she says is, "I'm going to eat your soul," and he turns around and sees like this demonic dog sort of creature, like from Ghostbusters, sort of thing. So there was at least a shared experience there, and allegedly on this night they were talking to the ghost, but I think it was actually just my friend Sam from oceanofbees.com just screwing around with them. But whatever, there's all sorts of experiences people have had.
Nightlight, I think I saw the other cut, Fleshlight.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't you guys?
No.
The first guy, though, the specter he saw...
Total rip-off, by the way.
The specter that he saw above the other friend, that was probably just the cloud of smoke from all the weed they were probably... All right, Tim, it's been cool talking to you. I have a crop circle to go make. So I'm going to go take care of that. Actually, I'll let you hold on to this. Illuminate yourself. See you, man.